Hi everyone, welcome to this Changing Minds event City Nature Challenge UK. This is the main stage, so this is where most of our content will be coming through today. And I hope everyone has had a successful time logging on and joining in some of the chat over in the networking sessions. My name is Matt Postles. I am the Deputy Director of the Natural History Consortium, which is a charitable partnership based in the west of England, but working nationally to engage people with the natural world through collaborative action. You might have come across us before through the Communicate conference for environmental communicators, through our work on BioBlitz, which may be very relevant to lots of you, and also through the Festival of Nature, which is our regional science festival. Hopefully you are all here to talk about City Nature Challenge as well. So this is a good opportunity to check that you are in the right place. I also wanted to quickly introduce our team, who you'll see in the chat under the Natural History Consortium, is Stu and Ellie, who will be helping to coordinate things today and can answer your kind of technical challenges or questions in the chat there as well on the right hand side. So if you are new to this kind of platform, pop in as well. You can see on the right hand side of your screen is our chat space, and you can see there in the stage part of the chat, you'll be able to put out your questions, your comments, your thoughts and ideas into that chat box, and it will appear for everybody who's in this stage session. If you want to broadcast more widely, for example, later on we'll go into some breakout sessions, you can also put them into the event chat there, which shows broadcasts to everybody wherever they are in the platform as well. So we've got a very interactive afternoon planned for you. So good to dust off your keyboards and make sure that you are ready to get involved with the chat. We are looking for this to be a very collaborative afternoon of developing ideas. But just to very much start off with, I just wanted to give a quick bit of context of kind of why we're here before we go into our next session, and a bit of a plan for the afternoon as well. So as I said, hopefully you're all here to talk about City Nature Challenge, which many of you will know is an international wildlife recording competition that was started 5 years ago in the United States, and is led on the international stage by the Los Angeles Natural History Museum and California Academy. Started out as a head-to-head San Francisco versus Los Angeles, who can find the most wildlife records over a long weekend, and the organizations that put it together had such success in engaging their local communities with this challenge that they decided to take it nationwide across the USA and then global, which now, a few years later, has become 250 odd cities across the world, 7 continents, all spending 4 days recording their local wildlife and uploading it onto data sets to compete to see who can find the most. We found it particularly an interesting way of introducing people to the concept of wildlife recording and citizen science, to collect that information and to connect with nature on their doorsteps and really take a closer look at the wildlife that is around them. And over the last few years, we've been representing Bristol and Bath as a city region in the competition, and we've been working with other city regions across the UK to have some informal collaboration to see where we can share ideas, share best practice, and learn from each other going forwards. And in 2020, we saw a really a boost to that collaboration as we were all thrust into lockdown, delivering City Nature Challenge at the end of April as a really positive story for people to be able to engage with nature whilst in lockdown, and when time in the outdoors was at a premium. So the kind of purpose of bringing everyone together like this as we go forward, thinking about the 10 cities who are all taking part this year and beyond those 10 cities as well. And Stu, if you can drop the list of 10 cities into the chat, that would be great, so I don't forget anybody whilst I'm running through. The challenge that I think that I'd like to put to everyone as we go into this would be, how might we collectively use the moment of City Nature Challenge to amplify our regional programs? How can we do take the things that we're doing locally and amplify them on a national stage? So to start with, I wanted to have a quick discussion and welcome to the stage shortly some speakers who will help form a panel to discuss some of the things around the data that we're collecting through City Nature Challenge and where that goes. And many of you will know that that the International Challenge uses its kind of default platform for collecting data is I Naturalist, a mobile phone app that allows you to take photos of wildlife and upload that directly into a central database, which then we can access and do lots of things with that through live during the event. But so to kickstart and to talk a little bit about I Naturalist and where that data goes, I'd like to welcome to the stage, if Ben, Giselle, and Andy, if you can all turn on your cameras and microphones and join me, that would be fab. Here. Hello.
Hello.
And what I might do is just to get started. If you all want to do a quick round of introducing yourselves, and if we start in the order that if we go in alphabetical order, maybe that would help. Or actually, we said that Ben might want to go first. Actually, didn't we? So I'm gonna put Ben on the spot. Would you like to introduce?
Go on then. My name's Ben Deed. I run Merseyside Biobank, which is the local environmental record centre for North Merseyside. In case you don't know what a record centre is, our function is all about supporting and encouraging local wildlife recording, collating information, and then using that in services to help promote and support local biodiversity actions such as conservation and advise planning.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Ben. And Andy.
Hi, Andy Slater. I work for Eco Record, which is the local environmental record centre for Birmingham and the Black Country. So I'm basically the Birmingham equivalent of Ben. Most areas in the UK have a local record centre, and they kind of tend to support their kind of local recording network, which might include specialist groups looking at various elements of wildlife. I'm one of the organisers for the Birmingham and Black Country city area.
Thank you, Andy. And then Giselle.
Hi, I'm Giselle, and I work for the National Biodiversity Network Trust. We're a charity that promotes and champions the sharing of biological wildlife records, and they come to us from a variety of organisations such as record centres, which Andy and Ben are representing, as well as conservation groups like BTO, RSPB, schemes and societies, individual recorders who use recording tools such as I Naturalist and I Record, and we share that freely for anyone to view and anyone to look at on the NBN Atlas, which has all records. I think at the moment there's over 198 million records on there for people to freely look at their leisure.
So thank you very much. Lovely. And the way that I was going to set this out was I've got a few questions to frame a little bit of conversation about the data and where it goes in relation to City Nature Challenge and I Naturalist. But if you have any questions as well that you'd like to put to the panel, then do drop them into the chat on the right-hand side, and I will try and pick out things as well, either as a group at the end or as things come along. And any that we don't get to as well, we'll have opportunities later on to carry on some of the discussion. So my first question that I was going to put out was to help people to kind of who are maybe less familiar with wildlife recording, was maybe just a kind of a quick round table from each of you on why we would want to collect this wildlife recording. You know, why would we want to encourage people to take part in this? I suppose if we should we go in the same order that we introduced in?
Okay, so from our perspective as a local environmental record centre, we work very closely with the Liverpool City region. So we all know about risks to the local environment, about declines in species, and actually there's a lot of legislation in place that tries to factor in information, so decisions around planning, for example, can be advised by evidence. So one of our main functions really is to collate information, so when, for example, the local authority is coming up with land allocation, so where they're going to put the houses and the industry and the green space, that is advised by evidence. And the species data we hold and the habitat information actually all feeds into that process. So where we have good information, we can actually help to advise better decision making. We also do that on a kind of a more direct basis through development control, and more broadly by working with partners such as the local wildlife trusts, who then will do things like will manage reserves or may target conservation action in particular places. So in the past, we've used data to help advise what needs to be a local priority species for our area. So all those kind of things, species data helps to direct that kind of decision and inform, really.
Thanks, Ben. We seem to have lost Giselle's camera for some reason. Hopefully that will sort of come back. Giselle, if you hit the refresh button, it should bring you back in.
I can still.
I'm still.
Oh, okay, maybe it's
I
just
can
me.
see stuff.
Yeah,
It's just me then. Ignore me. So Andy, do you want to add to that?
I think Ben was quite comprehensive there. I mean, just to mention a couple of other uses of data, you know, we get quite a few requests from universities and stuff like things like student projects and things like that. And also, like the City Nature Challenge and wild recording in general can act as a really useful early barometer of change and, like, you know, see what species are increasing or, you know, even new total new arrivals to an area, including things like invasive species as well. So it's a really good way of sort of testing almost like taking the temperature of the local environment.
Thanks, Andy. And Giselle, do you have anything to add from maybe a more national perspective as well?
Yeah. I forgot to also add that I'm also the lead organiser for the City of Nottingham, so I must mention that because I know there's few of my colleagues, Nottingham colleagues here. Yeah. So to add to that, what the NBN Atlas does, it brings together the national picture. So all the local records feeding into this national picture. So for education and research, it's a really useful tool. That data is fed into GBIF, which is the international data storage of all our records. And also by collating it in one place and bringing in all the other records, we can feed into reports such as State of Nature report that came out in 2019. So it's really valuable that all the records we get can be used and are used. So whether that's your individual sighting of a mallard on the local park to having much more detail, knowing what's happening with lichens or marine or thing, it is really valuable. So there's no such thing as sort of saying it's not worth it or it's too common, because those common species as well could give an indication of how an area is improving or going in a different direction than people thought. And species move around the country, and by having that national picture, you can kind of see, you know, how things have changed and seasons are changing, and so it's a really sort of valuable tool to have data.
Fantastic.
I've now
Sorry,
lost
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I lost you now. So.
Oh no, it's fine. I am still here. Okay. I don't know what's we're obviously just sort of grey screening for every so often. Yeah. That's sort of really helpful context, I think, because we're kind of, I think for a long time there's been, when we've been doing BioBlitz events that some people might be familiar with, which are kind of more 24-hour set area, collect as much wildlife data as you can, and for a long time it's been done sort of more pen and paper, and grid maps and feeding that data in. And I think from a participant point of view, if you're not part of the wider kind of environmental recording community, or if you're unfamiliar, it can feel a bit like you're kind of handing your data into a bit of a black hole and you don't know quite where it goes or how it's useful or who's going to use it. So having that kind of context, and that being really part of the story around City Nature Challenge, is that actually the things that people see on their doorsteps, in their gardens, in their local park, that is valuable information that feeds into the uses that Ben and Andy alluded to as well. I suppose as we talk sort of specifically about City Nature Challenge and I Naturalist as a platform as well, I think there's one of the really so I Naturalist is a platform that has originated outside of the UK, and so I'd be interested to sort of hear from you on what the value of using I Naturalist as a platform, and the kind of, and maybe as well the limitations of it as well going through. Should we start with Andy this time?
Yeah, sure. So we entered the City Nature Challenge for the first time last year, and before then, as a record centre, we hadn't really looked at I Naturalist. There's quite a few different recording systems out there, and one of the main ones for the UK is I Record. So we were kind of initially dubious as to the value of engaging with yet another kind of recording system. But then you look at I Naturalist, and there's lots of things that it offers that are sort of different to iRecord. And I think that level of conversation that it can generate, where you sort of upload a record and then that level of discussion then around the community on I Naturalist to help you to identify it, can be a really useful learning tool. And I think it's a great selling point of the City Nature Challenge that it is using I Naturalist, because it's a great kind of, it's almost like a gateway of getting people into recording who weren't completely new to it. And as an app, I Naturalist is a really easy one for people to pick up, and also helps them to learn as they're sort of going along through the automatic sort of software that kind of helps you to identify stuff to then the community. So from that point of view, we found it really positive in terms of engagement.
Fab. Thanks, Andy. And Ben, do you want to sort of reflect maybe on some of the backroom side of it, as well as where I Naturalist kind of gathers things that are maybe more difficult for someone who's new to recording to gather all that information together on their own?
Yeah, I mean, we first started using I Naturalist in 2019 as part of the Year of the Environment. So we set ourselves the task of engaging with a much wider audience than we had previously. And we found that where people had previously been put off by kind of the structure of the biological record, actually they found engaging with I Naturalist much easier. So that's encouraged a completely new section of local people who are now making wildlife observations. So then from our perspective, we then had to think about how we might collate that information, bring it down so we could use it in the local area. And the advantage of I Naturalist, similar to other web platforms, is it standardizes data. So as a record centre, we accept records from all sorts of different sources. But actually, by using I Naturalist, people are entering that data effectively into a form. So it picks up a certain amount of structure in that way, which means we can handle it, we can download it and work with it much more easily in kind of bulk. I mean, we have around 2 million records in the database. There's about 111,000 records within the biobank area in I Naturalist. So we need to have fairly efficient ways of handling all that information. And I suppose the other side of the benefit of I Naturalist as a platform is that we can always link back to the top copy of the record, so which then allows us to track back to the original recorder, so we can see their skills and experience, and we can see what's gone into the record as well in that way. So we've never lost that relationship really with the original record.
Fab. And I suppose that kind of leads into a little bit. I'm holding on coming to Giselle on that, because I know that there's a bit more to come on there. But just thinking about some of the maybe a quick point just on some of the limitations that we have. I think it's worth recognizing that iNaturalist, part of the rationale for going into iNaturalist is iNaturalist. That's a very different app, isn't it? The iNaturalist app is that it is what the rest of the world is using for City Nature Challenge. So it's there's a compatibility thing there, but also that we do have homegrown UK apps that have been developed more by the existing naturalist community for the existing naturalist community. I know Andy mentioned I Record there as well, which is a fantastic piece of software as well. Is very, very useful, but is very much aimed at the expert naturalist or the experienced naturalist who knows what they're doing already, rather than that entry level option that iNaturalist offers. But just thinking about thinking of it as a different tool for a different job, really from iRecord. But I think it's always worth highlighting that we're not necessarily here saying we're pushing iNaturalist above something like iRecord that people may already be familiar with, but that they feel like very, very different tools, and that iNaturalist lends itself to this kind of public engagement side much more strongly. I wanted to come back as well, and just sort of thinking about we've got a few minutes left, was actually to come back to Giselle, and because although this is an international app, there's been some great strides in bringing some better more integration into UK data pathways as well. So Giselle, if you wanted to give us a bit of an update on what's happening there.
Yeah, I mean, iNaturalist, as we've already mentioned, is an international app and is developed in the US, but it has grown, and there's now a network of families of iNaturalist. So different countries like Argentina, Spain, Luxembourg, Canada all have their own version. So the iNaturalist platform is the same, but they have a country-specific version, which allows the communities in those countries to be more in touch and engaged, and also get access to enhanced data. So at the moment, we can all access the public available data, but for the countries who have their own, what they call gateway, it allows them to get much more detail behind the scenes, and for their organisations to have better access and more use to them. So the NBN is looking at developing a UK portal or gateway, in effect. So we are working towards having a UK version that we would be the NBN Trust, in association with a couple of other partners, would manage, and that would give us the advantage. If that it's not set in stone yet, and we are working towards it, but we hope to achieve that, would allow us to have access to more enhanced data, which would be helpful for the record centres, so they can see much more detail about sightings that are currently at the moment, say, blurred, or I'm not sure if that's the right term, actually, I'm thinking but where people don't want to put the specific point because it's their home address. By allowing us access to that sort of detail, that will help with the work that the record centres are doing. It also allows us to sit on a steering committee as well, so that we can actually influence the future direction of iNaturalist, because there are parts of iNaturalist that are brilliant and work across the world, but the UK is quite unique in that it's one of the few countries that has such a rich history of recording already, and how already has loads of tools. So this is a complement to those existing tools, and to engaging with people who may not have engaged before, but also it has a value to experts, people who know a lot, who can kind of use that to record. And I know there's some people who use it along with iRecord, and it has advantages and disadvantages. But it's something that we're working towards. We know that it's something that would be really useful to have in the UK. So it's hard to kind of say anymore at the moment, because it is still in the planning process, and as soon as we can kind of let people know where we are and sign agreements and actually get it sorted, then we will let people know.
That is absolutely perfect, Giselle, actually, because that is bang on time as well. So it's very helpful that you can't say anymore. So thank you very much. We've had a few little questions come in through the chat, but I think what we might do to make sure that we stick to time, I know that that you're all planning on hanging around for time anyway. So if you wanted to have a quick look back through some of the questions and maybe answer some of those questions in the chat, if our panel were happy with that, that would be fantastic. I don't think it's a huge number of questions that we've had through. And then we can set ourselves up ready for our next session. We've scheduled in sort of a little 10-minute break now so that people can stretch their legs. We've made sure that we've got lots of opportunities for you to kind of look away from your screens, and if you want to do a bit of office desk yoga or dancing or whatever you do or grab a coffee for a few minutes. We'll be back here in 10 minutes on the main screen. So thank you very much to Ben, Giselle and Andy for that kind of whistle-stop tour of the biological data systems in the UK. And we'll be back here in a few minutes. So thank you very much.